Welcome back to season 3 of What the Fertility. This morning, we welcome Emily, who is the founder of Ready Nest Counseling, located in Nashville, Knoxville, and most recently, Charleston. Emily is a licensed marriage and family therapist and one of the first in the country to be certified in perinatal mental health. Her own journey into motherhood led her to helping couples and individuals transition successfully through the life stages of conception, pregnancy, postpartum, infertility, or loss. Welcome, Emily.
Well, thank you so much. That was too good. So I appreciate it. And I'm so thrilled to be here.
We are thrilled to have you on. And I know before we hit record, I was telling Amanda, you and I recently connected in the community professionally, but for listeners, we'd really love to hear, as the founder, what really your passion and light was for getting Ready Nest Counseling started.
Thank you so much. So yeah, my story goes way back before I ever thought about being a therapist. It really began with motherhood, right? So my husband and I we were living in California at the time and had been married a couple years. And, after a couple years of marriage, you start to be like, I guess we should get pregnant. Like, oh, is this the next thing? I don't know. And so we just really kind of looked at each other like, do we know what we're doing? Are we actual grown-ups here? And so we'd had a really good experience with our premarital counselor. And so we went back to him and we were like, hey, like, are we ready? How do you know when you're ready? How do you know what to expect? What changes are going to happen if we have a baby? What's that look like? And he was like confused, like, wait, so nothing's wrong? Like, and we're like, no, like, we just don't know what we're getting into here, And so we actually had counseling for a few months before ever even trying to conceive. And then it took us about a year to get pregnant with our first, which is not long in the big picture, but at the same time, I always tell everyone, I feel like anyone who wants to be pregnant wants to be pregnant yesterday, right? So any extra days are like an eternity. So yeah, and then that had really helped us. Then we were kind of the pioneer parents of our friend group, and then watching our friends become parents and some of the struggles. I mean, no, it's never easy, that kind of milestone, but we just felt like that dedication to committing to those, communication and our expectations, and we had really poured into our relationship during that time. And so it was a pretty smooth transition. We were able to really just be excited new parents, and learn together. And I think that teamwork was monumental for us and our marriage. And now 17 years later, it still holds. And
Oh,
four,
I love
four kids.
that.
Uh, yeah, so we now have 4 daughters, and so that really changed my life for obviously obvious reasons. And by the time I had our second, then I stayed home and I started a mommy blog and I wrote my book all about motherhood. It's called For All Maternity. And so that's when moms started reaching out and being like, hey, back in the early mommy blogging days, wanting advice, right? And I was like, I can give you my 2 cents. Like, I can tell you from my experience, but I felt very under credentialed to be able to give any kind of advice. But I loved it so much. And so that was the spark that was like, okay, clearly there's a need. There's a lot of mamas out there who, all of us don't know what we're doing. We're all feeling isolated or overwhelmed. And so that was like, I got to go back to school. Like, if I actually really want to do something about this and help others. And so we made the move from Southern California to Nashville, Tennessee with 2 toddlers and no jobs and a bunch of faith and hope. And
Wow. Okay. So you actually, the
incredible.
spark was before the career. Wow. That is
Yeah,
so cool.
exactly.
Oh
Yep.
my
Yeah.
goodness.
And then, Ready Nest, it's so funny because people are, they look at it now and they're like, wow, like, you're a business owner. And I always laugh because it's like, if Readiness had existed when I graduated, I would have happily just applied to work there, like,
Right. Yeah.
and so I didn't know I was starting a business. I was like, I just saw a need and kind of hung my shingle and, was like, all right, let's do this. This is a need and I believe in it. And here we are almost 8 years later with multiple locations. And great, fantastic team of therapists and administrative assistants that help us stay on track. So it's been awesome.
Right. Well, I mean, really what drew me there, and like for the motherhoods and pregnancy, that's phenomenal. But what drew me there was like, whoa, this is a resource very specific for women struggling with conception, for women going through loss, for a woman, again, in my OB offices that have had a miscarriage, just give them your readiness counseling card. Like that was what was so unique. Like what you're saying, like if it existed, I would apply, but now we're 2024 and I
Yeah.
still feel like you're the first organization I've even come across that offers those types of services.
Thank you. Yeah, the journey is so multifaceted, and we all know someone. I mean, either we've gone through it ourselves. I also have gone through a miscarriage. I also have, struggled with all these same things. I mean, you just are a mom, and and now having 4 daughters, they're my why. It's like I want to change the whole landscape of maternal mental health so that whatever their journeys may be, if they choose to become mothers, that it's supported and normal and there's no weirdness. I mean, they already, some of them go to counseling here and there, so it's like
Yeah.
it's positive, it's available, accessible, known. And so that's the thing, is like it's not that, oh, suddenly there's a need. There's always been a need. But we need to get in front of them to be able to say, like, yeah, no, we're here for that. We're here for that. And you don't have to be it alone.
And I think there's also been such a stigma for so long around one, mental health, and then especially fertility. I feel like it's been such a hush hush. Now I think everyone has been more open to talking about it. I mean, there's obviously all over social media, and there's like platforms like Kat and I are hoping to be doing and spreading awareness. So I
Exactly.
love that so much that you're doing this. This is so incredible.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So if they're, okay, we'll just jump into it, right? Listeners
All
are probably,
right.
right, the listeners like, ooh, this is cool. Okay, so what would this look like? I think like I'm gonna just use my own experience as an example, right? So let's just say I had like my first or second miscarriage, and I'm like, this really happened. I was looking for therapy. I never to this day have found a decent therapist, mostly because I don't feel like it was specific. And I know that you're certified in perinatal mental health. So I definitely want to understand that a bit too.
Sure.
But what I guess is unique to coming to readiness counseling versus finding a family therapist per se.
Right, right. Absolutely. So the certification, first of all, comes with a lot of extra education, right? So any marriage and family therapist is going to have gone to school and get kind of a basic, very thorough but generalized approach to a whole host of, anxiety, depression, family dynamics. We look at the family as a system. And so even if there's only one person getting therapy in the room, we understand there's a context where you get influenced by other people, you have boundaries, and it's a kind of a web that you're working with this one individual who's attached to so many other people. So that kind of systems work is what marriage and family therapists do best. And then the perinatal mental health component is extra trainings, primarily through Postpartum Support International, that's who they have supported this certification. And so I think you had to have worked with the population for 2 years. You have to go through all their trainings, and then you sit for an examination. And so I had all of that miraculously perfectly timed to line up with when in 2018 the certification became available for the first time. So it wasn't until then that this was even a thing. And I had happened to check all the boxes right then. And so I was lucky enough to sit in the first round of the exam and become one of the first in the country to get certified. And I was really privileged this last year to be able to sit on kind of an advisory expertise board that actually helped edit the current test. And so the examination itself is like, now what questions should we have on there? So it was really wild to be like
Oh,
on the
cool.
inside track, of like, what are we even saying is important for people to know to become certified in this. So there's that. But at Ready Nest, even our intake paperwork, we want to understand your journey. We want you to tell us, any losses or medical conditions, or even if that was in your family line, let's say like you said, Kat, suffered a couple miscarriages, like, okay, we would understand that it's going to be yet another loss until they diagnose you with recurrent losses, right? And
Right.
we understand that, like, okay, how was your experience in that OB office? Do you need to change providers? Is that triggering for you? Do you want to talk about that? What's your support system at home and extended? Have you told your friends? Do you feel like you can? Almost all of our clients going through that are also in the life stage where their friends are getting pregnant. So that is a huge component. That's like, hey, who do you want to punch in the face today? And we just talk
This
about
is
it all
such
the
a breath of fresh air for
I
me,
know.
because obviously I haven't been to readiness counseling because now I know all you guys.
Yeah.
But
You get it for free now, girl.
right,
Just yeah,
right.
yeah.
Just send you a text. But just even that 2 sentences you just said is a complete 180 from what I've experienced. They didn't even understand to ask those types of questions. I feel like that is the need, and that's so incredible that you guys are aware of that.
For sure.
Yeah, now we're starting, we have a lot of interns, so we're able to start training them. I lead trainings, from that very first day before they even interact with clients. And so it's awesome because now it's overlapping with their education, right? And that was the thing that I was so desperate for in getting my degree, my master's, in marriage and family therapy, that it was like, okay, I knew my passion. And so I geared every project, every paper, every assignment I could that I had an option of, with that research, with that topic, and being able to do that. And so it's cool. Now we're starting to be able to layer that in for people who already know they want to learn about this population right away.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I went through the counseling program and I have like my LPC. And so mine was mostly just like family and marriage and all of that. But I was always passionate about children. And so that was like an option for me, but that was, you know, any kind of fertility or anything back then. I went through this in like 2016. So that was not an option at all. And so that's so cool that that is now there and you're kind of paving the way for other people. I love that so much. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome to give back too, because it's like, well, what would I have wanted back then when I was in school? What would I have been looking for, and just trying to stir up that this is so much more than just postpartum depression. Like that's always the one that gets the highlight, it's like
Yeah.
that's the one the celebrities come out, like afterward, after they're fine and their baby's so cute. That's like, oh yeah, we had that,
Right.
we had infertility. We had, it's always on the cusp of a happy ending though. So
So can I steal some minutes for free therapy here?
absolutely, girl. Yeah.
You bring up postpartum depression, and this is one of the number one questions I get asked by just people that have found me on Instagram or people that are in our local What the Fertility group is like, okay, they had an early miscarriage, they had a second trimester miscarriage, or even, they've had a stillbirth, and they're like, is it still normal that I'm feeling super depressed? Could this be postpartum depression? Number one, do you see that often? You're shaking your head, yes. And number
Yes.
two, could you maybe just speak on that, like from your perspective?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That is such a huge misconception, right? Because you get so focused on the loss, and of course that's important, and we're doing grief work, and we're doing, all kinds of things around the loss that it should never be overlooked, but we kind of forget, oh, you're a postpartum mom. Like you just had a baby. Even if that baby isn't here in your arms, that alone is traumatic for your body to go through, right? And so, we especially kind of toss away the early first trimester miscarriages that, like, oh, your body's fine, it can bounce back, and that's not fair. It's still usually very traumatic. There's still lots of bleeding. Sometimes it's extremely painful physically, that there still needs to be a recovery period. And then, yeah, it's usually from 16 weeks on that your milk may come in, regardless of that it's not for everyone, but I mean, that's still really, really early, and so, you're usually starting to show by then. And, I just talked to a lost mom yesterday and, talked to her about, hey, I know probably, your friends and family are like, oh, you look so great. Like this is a few months later. And they don't understand that like that poochy belly is like the very last part of the journey, that when you lose that, that's really sad. You don't want to bounce back. You don't want to get back. You don't want your milk to dry up, And so, yes, it is, it's kind of overshadowed by grief, and so it doesn't. I think that it's both. It is postpartum depression and grief, but we kind of, camp it, as a culture in like, "Oh, you're just sad because you lost your baby or your pregnancy," but it's like, yes, but also my hormones are raging. You can clinically be quote unquote pregnant for like a couple months. It may take a long time for that HCG level to go down. And so then you don't get your period yet. You don't like, it's not normal, quote unquote, it's like
Right,
you're still kind of
right.
in between. And so it can take a while for your body to regulate, to reset. And so, yes, and then that whole grief process is so unique to every situation of, was there trauma beyond, like, was there medical trauma? Is your body okay? And then what was the final diagnosis? It usually takes a few months to be able to know, like, did something go wrong, or did your body, um, act accordingly, like function correctly, and then there was something that, genetically couldn't thrive and continued to cause the loss, So that then changes the entire trajectory of what's next, right? And so there's the here and now, right, in the loss, but then projecting forward, it's like that's the other thing other people don't understand is like, I call it, maternity math is like 9 to 12 months out, right? So it's like, well, then when was the due date? Okay, then the due date comes. It's like, I wasn't supposed to be going on vacation. I was supposed to be having a baby right now. Like looking ahead, like I was supposed to be on maternity leave. Like, so the loss kind of continues as these as these shadows kind of pop up, and everyone else is like, you should be doing better by now. And you're like, no, no, my whole year just got flipped upside down.
Yeah.
You said that better than even like Amanda and I are sitting here, and I know you've gone through it too, but I mean, I just got some therapy. I didn't even think about that stuff. I mean, I
know.
did subconsciously, but that is,
Yeah. It's
wow.
so true.
Yeah. And it's just validating, even just for me sitting here right now, to hear that there is a therapist out there that can validate those feelings. Cause my personal experience, I went to 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Not one of them even, they didn't even want to hear about the experience and the loss to an extent. But
yeah, for mine, it was more just like brushed over. It was like it was a topic we addressed, but it was very much like we didn't go deep into it. It was more just like, okay, here are some tools to kind of just like go through it fast and not really like dive deep into my loss and like all the other things that you just talked about. Like a year later, I was still struggling, and because it was like the milestone, and I mean, still to this day. And so, yeah, like Kat said, just you validating that is, I mean, it's so helpful for so many women, truly. I mean, couples, everyone, like,
yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah. I love it when the dads come, it's awesome. And I think even, whoever shows up, they can bring it. Cause that's one of my first questions is, how's he doing? What was his grief like? And everyone grieves at different paces and in their own cultures and in their different ways, and what that means. And so being, incredibly sensitive to like, what does that even mean to you and for you and your family? Of course, we just went through the holidays. So there was a lot of like, how do you acknowledge that? Does your baby have a stocking and that makes your mother-in-law really uncomfortable? And it's like, there's so many, traditions and ways in which people want to have their own way of honoring that loss. And we need to be able to bridge that gap and be like, girl, hang that stocking up. It's like, that is your baby. And here's how we talk to mother-in-law about that and get ahead of it.
That's amazing.
I
And
love that.
so I'm sure a lot of listeners are like, dang it, I heard they're in Tennessee and South Carolina, but you guys do a ton of virtual, right?
We do. We do a ton of virtual,
Is it
um,
specific though to the two states right now?
it currently is, and Florida. So Florida, I don't know, it's just Florida. They have it available to register for telehealth. So from Tennessee, we can actually accept telehealth clients in Florida. Thanks, Florida. And then, yeah, we have a virtual new moms group. We also have an in-person in Nashville and Knoxville, but the virtual new moms group on Thursdays is awesome. And so anybody anywhere can join that. We have a variety of topics. It's every week, so you can go to our website, go to our groups page and see what's up. And then always reach out, even if you're not in our region. I know somebody who might be similar to us in your region, or, we'll be able to formulate some kind of plan for you or hook you up with a resource. We're building our online coursework out. And so trying to make things a little more accessible for everyone everywhere.
That's incredible. Where exactly, so like if people were wanting to, that are in the state, or, if they just want to go on and find these resources and stuff, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, if you just go to readinesscounseling.com, you'll be able to see everything that we offer. Poke around our website, see, go to the Meet Us page, see our team. Yeah, but we are in the heart of Nashville in Hillsborough Village, if you're local. We also have an office in Franklin, which is right outside of Nashville. And then we have our office in Knoxville, and then, yes, in Charleston and Mount Pleasant, actually. So really close to there. And we're just so excited about expanding our services and helping all the people.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
incredible.
Yeah, I know locally we're very excited to have you. And I know, we've just recently talked like a ton about loss and miscarriage and even just postpartum and motherhood. I would love to just gain a little bit more
Oh,
insight
yeah.
from like a counseling therapy perspective on like conception, or these women and listeners that they're like,
Yep.
okay, it's been 2 to 3 years. And I'm like, I know I'm listening to this podcast, but I haven't had a miscarriage. Like I've just never even gotten pregnant. Do you have any, I guess, insight or anything that you wanted to touch on that topic specifically?
Absolutely. I mean, these are all my favorite topics, so I can talk for days. Yes, it's one of those things that typically, what patterns I see is early on, they don't tell anybody. It's like their little secret they're going to try to conceive because they think it'll happen in a month or two. And then it doesn't. And so then maybe they start, maybe a friend gets pregnant or somebody asks, like, when are you going to have a baby? And then so you start telling a few friends here or there. And then maybe 6 months, 12 months in, now there's, all right, I'm going to my OB. What's up? Am I even ovulating? Now, I guess I need to learn some things about ovulation strips and timing and all these things. So that's when you start to like really live life 2 weeks at a time. You're either, testing on ovulation strips, or you're testing if you're pregnant, that you're drinking wine half the month and then not the other. It's like
Yep.
just kind of back and forth. And then what gets so wearing is if you start any interventions, or and then you tell your support group or your little circle of friends, and then it's really awkward, right? Because everyone is like, I want to know, but I don't know what to ask. And you're like, I'm tired of updating everyone about not being pregnant and all this back and forth. And so, it's really important to just I mean, if you're married or obviously with your partner, like working on that communication. Does he have a buddy or two that he can talk to? Because by then it's like, get a buddy, like even if it's
Mhm.
another dad, that you don't know that his wife didn't struggle with this too. And so just kind of opening that conversation, and then be really choosy about that one or two friends that know everything. And I would really be encouraging like limiting it to that, to a really tight circle that does get all the updates, and you have them and they're there for you. And those are the people you can blatantly say, like, shut up about your baby. I don't want to know anything today, and they're still
Right, like,
friends.
and I would go through like a roller coaster, like, I wanna share everything, and then
Yes.
please, I don't wanna talk to anybody at all, and I
Yes.
think that's great advice to have that group that you can say, "No, I'm not gonna talk to you
Not
today."
today. Yeah.
Because when there's so
Exactly.
many people, then you have to repeat yourself like 100 times and it's so overwhelming in itself. And then to have to keep like repeating the same thing. And it's usually like bad news if you're still going through it and you just
Right.
keep reliving it over and over and over again, then it's just so wearing.
Yeah, and it's like you didn't know you were gonna get a whole glossary of medical terms and like get a whole education. I mean, it's like getting another degree, going to school, trying to figure out like through all the treatments. And so it's and it's so unique. So even if they're like, oh, your Aunt Susan's daughter went through IVF, it's like everybody tries to pull from
And then
this.
you're like, it's not
No,
worth explaining, "Well, she went through
no,
IVF because of this," and it's a
right.
it's not even the same thing.
No
Right.
correlation at all. Yeah.
Right. And then there's these really weird, like, oh, they had a baby with another woman. And you're like, no, mom, it's a surrogate.
Right,
It's just
right.
a carrier. It's like
Oh my
all these
gosh.
things. It's like, yeah. And I mean, it's awesome. We can laugh about it, but in the moment you just want to like crawl under a rock, and so it's so unfortunate that similar to grief, it's the responsibility of the person that is enduring it, who has to inform everybody about what they're going through and what they need.
Yeah.
It's so unfair, right? And so it's like I really encourage, like, if your friend is going through this, look it up, do some homework on your own. Like,
That's
if
good.
your parent, like, encourage your parents to like look into it and not ask you, and just do a little bit of research or ask their doctor friend or whatever. It's like to be able to get some legwork and clarity on even just some of the basic terms. Resolve.org is a great place to start with just some of that medical background so that you can kind of carry on in a conversation at a level that's like, oh yeah, I understand what that test is. How was that for you? Without being like, why'd you do that? And
Yeah,
and not,
because then you almost
That's
feel
amazing.
stupid. I know, I've definitely been in all those situations where you're just like, I don't even wanna explain it to you, like, forget it."
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Those
It's
are
tough,
great.
tough
Yeah,
out
that's
there.
That's such good
great
tips.
info. I know. I love, and I don't think we're gonna jump into it, but I just love the whole thing of like, get your partner involved. Get your partner
Yes.
involved, especially when it's a male. Like, I know my poor husband, I don't think he talked to anybody about it. And I'm over here posting social media, and
Yeah,
he was
same.
pretty big in the community. And so people would come up to him like in a class and be like, "Oh, like I'm really sorry for your loss." And he'd be like, "Who are you and how did you find that out?"
How
So
do you know
Right.
this?
we probably need to get connected to some therapy here.
Well, it's so true, right? And they don't know what to do. And so, quick reminder that, it's actually an even split. It's 1/3 diagnoses are male factor, 1/3 are female factor, and 1/3 are unexplained. So there's a lot of guys out there who are the reason the tests are being done, and that's one thing that just systematically needs to change, because the very first thing is, hey, I think I have regular periods. I'm going to go to my OB. The woman gets checked. I mean, I've seen it be years before some couples are like, oh, maybe he should get a sperm count. It's like, like it's
Or
insane.
something that I experienced was then like the parents of the male were like, "Well, why can't you get pregnant? Is that in your family or what's going on?" Or, "Oh, your brother's wife had a miscarriage. Like, why?" I'm like, "Well, first of all, we're not related." But you know what I
Right.
mean? So then it
Yes.
becomes this
Yep.
whole like pressure on the woman when in reality, maybe your kid.
Yeah, maybe it's the
Yep.
other way.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
I'm
I get it.
so appreciative, number one of all, just the advice on both topics. And I know we shared your website. You have a really good Instagram as well. I'd love to kind of tag that.
Thank you. Oh yes, Emily.Pardy. Yeah, I just finally caved this last year and set up an Instagram professional account for myself. So I would love more followers because yeah, of course, Readiness Counseling it has its own account, but yeah, follow me along. You'll see my silly girls and my husband. We try to pop in here and there of just a little bit of the personal life because it's so integrated into what I do. And that, I mean, that they're the love of my life. And this is just the avenue I get to, be able to help others through. So
I love that
Absolutely.
so
Do you
much.
have
Is there
any? Oh, go ahead, Amanda.
No, Sam was saying the same thing. Is there any other like advice or just kind of like last tips that you would want to share with our audience?
yeah, I mean, I think, one of the biggest questions I get is like, well, how do you know if you need counseling, right? How do I know, at what point or whatever? And obviously I'm going to be biased that like I don't think there's ever a wrong time to seek counseling, but one thing I really advocate for is that we don't keep you longer than you need us. Like it is not our prerogative to hang on to weekly sessions for the rest of your life. It's one of those things that primarily I would encourage you like come in, meet with someone, have they'll talk through like your goals in the very first session. It may be like just in the here and now, like, hey, every time I put my baby down, he cries and I freak out and I get a rush of anxiety. Like, okay, like that literally only happens when your baby cries. Like, okay, let's talk about that. And then sometimes there's more layers to it. It's like, oh, it's because I'm returning to work in a couple weeks. And then we can talk about life balance and boundaries and how that this is a whole new role shift for you because now you're carrying these two, multiple identities of being a new mom and being a employee, et cetera. So, sometimes it expands into that, but all that to say, like, just come in, talk about it, see if it fits. And I have so many that like, yeah, we'll do maybe 6 to 8 sessions. You're in a much better place, feet are on solid ground. And then it may be like not until the holidays, or we'll check in. And I kind of regularly every 3 or 6 months just toss out another check-in email. Hey, how's it going? Life happens, something comes up, and it's like, well, and if we can help you, you're a Readiness client, right? So people are like, well, I'm not pregnant right now. It's like, cool. Are you alive? Awesome. We can help you. So
Yeah,
Love
um,
it.
yeah, come on in. And then, if a better resource is what you need, we will point it out to you. So if I'm like, oh, you need a lactation consultant, you don't need a therapist, it's like you've got stress around these feeding issues, but this is really where the help is. I will direct you to find that resource and connect the dots. So you can't go wrong. Just come on out and we're here to help.
I love it. And I know, so just like had gone through counseling, being on the counselor side,
Yeah.
just financially, counseling can get expensive. Do you guys offer any kind of, do
Yep.
you take insurance? What is that? Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Of course, it can be a huge barrier, and our goal is to not ever have that be the barrier. So we don't take insurance for a few good reasons, mainly because with these diagnoses, it stays on your medical record, and most people don't know that. And so, but we are able to submit super bills. And so if you don't know that term, learn it wherever you are, not just with Readiness. That basically it's an invoice log. We say, here's how many times you came, you submit it to your insurance, and most will reimburse all of them. Some will say like, oh yeah, we'll cover 6 a year, 12 a year, that kind of thing. And so it's totally depending on what insurance you have. And so you just have to call your insurance and see if they cover anything. So we just would send you a super bill and you can get that covered. And then we do have what we call custom care plan. And so in other places you may have heard like sliding scale. But more than that, we call it a custom care plan because yes, it may be a reduced rate with like one of our, high level master's level counseling interns, which a counseling intern is not someone who gets coffee for the other counselors. It's someone in the master's program who's getting their clinical hours, right? So we hate that term, but it's what they're called. And when we can see them for as low as, $50, $30 sometimes. And then of course our more, the more experience, the higher licensure, the longer they've been licensed, they are more expensive. But I also want to kind of pop the misconception that that doesn't, sometimes the higher level is going to be so much more effective, faster. And so for your bang for your buck, basically, is like you could come a lot less frequently. And so don't think of it as like, oh, well, that's the same amount of money weekly. It's like, well, you may be able to go every other week and then just once a month, and essentially have the same total cost at the end, because we're going to fit it into your budget. So whatever that is, maybe we suggest, yeah, see this intern, but then come to our weekly moms group, and then, or come to this grief workshop that we're having. And, and we're going to kind of put together a whole plan, hence the name, that's customized to your needs, to your budget, to your schedule. And so always ask, and we will figure out a way you can get the help you need.
That's incredible and so helpful. We really appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. If there's
Thank you.
any other last minute things that you want to say, we are so grateful that you were on and just to share all this knowledge. And I feel like we got our own counseling session. So thank you.
Incredible. Well, thank you for what you guys are doing, and to be so vulnerable and forthcoming with your own stories, and just again, breaking down that stigma that like we can talk about hard things, y'all, and we're here for it. And so I love that. I'm here anytime you want to chat. I'm